So good morning, everybody. We're here to talk about homeschooling, the elementary levels or ages here in Virginia. I'm going to be sharing my screen and sharing my slides. And if at any point you have some questions, you're welcome to share them in the chat box here on Zoom. And if I don't cover it during my webinar, then we'll go over your questions at the end. So here we are. All right. All about homeschooling elementary ages. So here's some of the stuff I'm going to be going over today. There's going to be like a little extra sprinkled in, but largely we're going to talk about following the law, finding curriculum, socializing, one of the top questions about homeschooling, re-entering school if you decide that homeschooling is not for you, and then of course some questions and answers. Me, if you don't know me, my name's Melissa. I homeschool my three teens, and I am the pack leader of three tiny rescue pups. Um, Inclusivity, neurodiverse, affirming spaces, and people are very important to me. And that is who I am, and that is what I try to be for others. I'm autistic, I have ADHD, and so do my kids. So that's largely the group of people I work with, but of course, I'm able to work with neurotypical families as well. Some things that are important to me outside of this would be real estate. I am a real estate agent um, in Virginia. I've been doing that for 8 years now. So I love it. I'm good at it. Yoga and meditation. I'm working on getting my teacher certifications with those. So I'll be doing some offerings for that stuff soon as well. And I love organization, decor, art. Yeah, creativity and expressing myself is fun. So on with the important stuff, following the law. Unless you're homeschooling under the certified tutor statute or the religious exemption, the following is required: a notice of intent and the evidence or proof of progress. Those are just two documents. So I know a lot of people that come from states that have no requirements feel like this is a lot, right? But this is actually not a lot. There are states that require way more than Virginia. So two documents: notice of intent, you'll see it called the NOI, and our proof of progress, which is you'll see referred to as POP. So your notice of intent is due by August 15th of every year if you know you're going to be homeschooling, right? So if you're homeschooling this year and you already know you're going to be homeschooling for the 24-25 year, you're going to be sending in your NOI by August 15th. Now, if you're just considering homeschooling this year, and you don't know until August 16th that you're going to do it, send it August 16th. That's no big deal. If you send the kids to public school for the 24-25 year and you decide anytime during the year you're going to homeschool, you can always remove them at any point of the year, and send your NOI in there. So that due date of August 15th is just for people who know they're going to be homeschooling for the coming year. And it's okay to change your mind at any point. And then your proof of progress is due by August 1st every year. And so your proof of progress is showing the superintendent's office that your child has achieved adequate growth and progress while homeschooling. Um, if you homeschool for any length of period, you do have to follow that requirement. So, say you leave the public school on 2 weeks before their school year ends. You say, you know what, we're done here. We can't do it anymore. You leave um, with just 2 weeks left. You still have to send that proof of progress for your homeschooling by August 1st of that year. That makes a lot of people nervous because they're like, well, we haven't done anything. We haven't had enough time to do anything. How are we supposed to, fulfill that requirement? Um, and that's nothing to worry about. The proof of progress, I can't remember if it's on my next slide. No, it's not. The proof of progress can be handled by a nationally normed standardized test. The requirements for the scores on that test are very low. So there's usually no problem with a child completing that test and sending that in for their proof of progress and achieving an adequate score. Another option for your proof of progress is an evaluation. And that is one of my most popular services that I do. It is just a conversation between you and the evaluator. Different evaluators are going to do it differently, so I can only speak on myself in my process, but I just have a conversation with the parents about, maybe the reasons why you left school, your goals for homeschooling, what you're thinking, where you're at, what you're worried about. Um, and that's my evaluation process for, people who leave mid-year or end of the year and they haven't really had time to do anything, right? And don't worry that that's a problem because it's absolutely not. So, Virginia does have a compulsory attendance law for children, period. So, any child who's 5 on or before September 30th has to be enrolled in a school, whether that's a public school, private school, or homeschool or whatever. Um, but you can delay kindergarten, whether that's through public school or homeschooling. You can, if they're not 6 on or before September 30th, you can just contact the local school board where they would be going to school at and ask what procedure they prefer for this notification. You're not requesting permission, you are notifying them. So you contact them and say, how do you want me to notify you? In some districts, that phone call is all that's needed. In some districts, they might require you to send a letter, um, letting them know something, on paper or email. Um, and on the bottom of the slide here, I just want to let everybody know that we can't rely on any public school official to know our homeschooling laws. So it really is our responsibility to be confident in our knowledge of them, because if you call them and you say, how am I supposed to do this? They won't know, or they'll pull something out of their pocket, or they'll just give you straight up wrong information. So that's not their job to know about the homeschooling laws. So it's our job. And so my next slide, this website is where I prefer to go to reference the law, hslda.org. I highly recommend going on there and browsing and just familiarizing yourself so it's not scary. Um, it's just scary because we don't know. That's it. So I do constantly reference the law when I'm talking to people just because I got a lot going on and I don't want to tell people the wrong thing. And there are a lot of numbers, and my brain doesn't like to hold numbers. So I do commonly, like really frequently, reference this website just to make sure I'm speaking correctly. Now, before you start homeschooling, if you're already using a school of any type, your child's already been to school, um, the first thing you have to do is deschool. Deschooling, you want to think about that as like a summer break where nothing's required of them. They're just chilling. They're sleeping in. They're eating their favorite foods. They're playing their video games. The purpose of deschooling is to basically unlearn what we already know about what learning is supposed to look like. And this is just as much for the parents as it is for the learners, right? Because maybe you're leaving the school system because your learners this ball of anxiety now, because the way things are done there at school doesn't work well for them. So obviously, you're not going to do the same thing at home. right? But maybe you were brought up in this system and that's all you know. So the purpose of this deschooling period is to relearn what schooling has to look like, you know? Learning isn't just sitting at a table with a book open in front of you. It's not just pencil and paper. Um, so we ideally we want the child to relax during this period. Um, because you don't want to step into your new homeschooling journey with them very much still in that frame of mind of public school. And so when you say school, maybe they react poorly. Maybe they freeze. Maybe they go into this very tense, situation inside of themselves and they're going to respond very poorly to you. So we need to let that fall off of them. One of my children, we still can't, honestly, it's all of my children. I shouldn't say one. We still can't say school around here because just the word of school uh, triggers that uh, anxiety response they have from having spent so much time in public school. So deschooling is very important. And so much so, I have a second slide on it. How long your deschooling period is dependent on you and your child. I've seen some people say 1 month for every year they spent in public school. Um, that was very off the mark for my family. I can say, you know, I took my one of my children out in fifth grade, so it would essentially be 5 months, right? But he needed well over a year. How do you know when your deschooling period is over? Well, you know your child, right? And you know when they're relaxed and calm and comfortable and happy. That's when you start thinking about beginning homeschooling, right? And also during this time, excuse me, I'm talking a lot. Um, you're going to spend this time contemplating what homeschooling is going to be looking like, right? Um, talk to your learner because a lot of parents, we just send them to public school and we don't really know what's going on there or how they feel about it. It's just they go and they come home and they won't tell us anything about the day, right? So this is a time to talk to your learner and say, hey, do you like reading out of a book and learning out of a book? Or do you really like documentaries? Or do you really like virtual learning? Um, maybe they really want to learn in a group again in a class, right? That's really important to them. Or maybe they really don't want to be around people, and that's okay too. Do they need you to follow every single thing that they do and be very like micromanaged and a very strict um, routine and expectations? Or do they need the opposite? Um, and what do they want to learn? That's really important. What's their favorite thing to learn about? Um, I could talk forever on deschooling because that period really changed my family's life. Yeah, I could talk a lot about that. Socialization is often a concern. Um, not as much with the mothers, but with the fathers. I hear a lot of mothers saying, that their husbands, their partners are worried about socializing. But this is not 1960. This is homeschooling looks very different now if you're unfamiliar with it. It's just overwhelmingly different than what you think it is. So I highly recommend joining any local homeschooling Facebook groups you're in. Look through the posts because you're going to see the same questions asked over and over, and they're probably your questions, right? Ask your own questions. Some groups will have a guide or a document shared for you that goes over everything you could possibly think of to do with homeschooling. So I find Facebook groups to be a wealth of information. Um, And you're going to see that the opportunities are endless. There are co-ops that are, strictly educational based, co-ops that are just for socializing. There are nature groups. We have a Pokemon club here. It's really popular. Arts and crafts groups. Um, I mean, if it's almost too much. So many options. So that should never be a worry. What classes are required when you homeschool? The only classes in Virginia that we're required to report on at the end of the year for our proof of progress is math and language arts. So even if you take the tests, you only send in the math and language arts portion. Um, Obviously, that's not all homeschoolers cover, and it is up to the parent to decide what should be covered, in addition to math and language arts. It really is up to us. And then a common question is curriculum. Um, I highly uh, advise against purchasing curriculum until you've started the deschooling period, or maybe you're well into it, you're near the end, maybe you've even started homeschooling before you've purchased the curriculum. I hear a lot of people. They don't really understand how it works and the importance of the deschooling period. And so they really feel like they need a curriculum before they even remove their child from school. That is a bad idea, not a good idea, right? Um, you really need that deschooling period, and it's not necessary for you to know what you're going to do moving forward before you remove your children if your children are already in school. So, obviously, you don't want to spend hundreds of dollars on something without figuring out what works for your family. And you don't want to make any assumptions. And maybe you just straight out don't know what works for your kid, right? So some families purchase a whole curriculum and that works well for them. Some families don't purchase any. Some families piece together some from this and some from that. That's pretty much what we do over here. Um, whatever you choose in the beginning, just know that almost every family pivots a lot in that first year, right? We think we know the direction to go in, what's going to work, and then we realize that we don't. We make some adjustments and go from there. If you find yourself doing that, just know that you're on the right track. You're you're doing what everybody does in that first year. And then I wanted to talk about going back to school if you discover that homeschooling is not a good fit for your family. Because I do find that some people kind of worry about that, and that keeps them from homeschooling is because they don't understand the process of going back to school. But it is very simple. You just register them for the school, whether that's, private school or the public school that they're zoned for. And usually when entering at the public school ages, they just slip the kids into the grade they'd expect them to be in. That's not always the case, so you definitely verify with your school before making that assumption. Um, so they usually don't, test the child to see where they're at academically. They just, if they're 10 years old, okay, we expect you to be in fifth grade. There you go. 6 years old, okay, we're going to put you in first grade. They don't test anybody. They usually just slip them right in. So if you need individual help, I know this is a lot. If you get to the point where you want to make some one-on-one meetings with me, I love walking people through it. The same with real estate. But I love taking something that's scary, but so amazing and important and powerful and walking people through it and helping them become confident and secure and excited. Um, so that is one way to reach me there at my email if you need to set up something um, individual, something just me and you. So let me hear your questions. You're welcome to unmute yourself. You're welcome to type them in the chat bar. It's a lot. It's a big topic. Sure, I missed some stuff. Mm, okay, got some. Here we go. So, how do we pick an evaluator? Um, so if you go into a homeschooling Facebook group for your local area, or even the state, really, and then search the group for evaluator, you're gonna find a lot of maybe advertisements or people asking the same question, and then people responding and saying, I'm an evaluator, right? Um, I would recommend that. If you would like to check out my process, I'm going to include a link in the chat for you guys to open up so you can read about mine. Different evaluators are they're gonna do things different, right? So my evaluation process is very low key and as stress-free as possible, um, because that's what my family needs as an anxious household, right? Um, and other evaluators, I've even heard of evaluators administering tests, which is kind of weird because you can do a test instead of an evaluator. But yeah, different people are going to do it differently, right? So I sent that to you privately, but I'm also going to send it to everybody, my link, so you can read about my process um, from start to finish. And then let's see, does that answer your question well enough about finding an evaluator? Okay, I'm going to move on. Please let me know, Samara, if that doesn't answer your question well enough. Michelle, what are some of the best curriculums to start looking at? I wish that I had like a more experience with it because we're not huge curriculum people here. I would, you can find them everywhere. I like looking at things in person. So I would search for a homeschool curriculum store local to you. We have one here in Virginia Beach that I've been to several times. I'd just like to kind of put my hands on it and touch it. And yeah, I'm 40, so that's what I do. Um, yeah, so I would see if there's a store in person if you like that. Um, if you Google homeschool curriculum, you're gonna have so many options. I hear a lot of people really like the good and the beautiful. Um, and that is not a secular curriculum. So then it depends, do you want to do something secular? Do you want to have a little bit of religion in it? Um, I hear a lot of good things about the good and the beautiful. Um, a lot of people choose a different curriculum for different subjects because they find that when if they purchase like a curriculum that covers all the subjects, something's not going to be a perfect fit, right? Because one size doesn't fit all. And so, um, for example, we went to Barnes and Noble with my daughter who has a lot of math anxiety, and I had her look through the math books there and pick something that didn't, trigger her anxiety or anything. So just a lot of exploring. Samara, I'm just a bit confused on what the state wants from the evaluator. I feel like it's not enough. Like, how do I trust the evaluator? Isn't saying, yeah, you're good, go on. Okay, yeah, sure. Um, Thankfully, in our state, the law doesn't set um, a lot of demands on the evaluator and what they must do and how they must complete an evaluation. That's important for the learners who have disabilities. Um, very important. So that's largely, the learners that I work with. And I mean, I understand the concern. If parents have a lot of concern about the child being on track or being at grade level, I highly recommend looking at the Department of Education's SOL points for the grades. And maybe that'll give you a little more confidence in being where they should be. I highly advise against that mindset personally. It is one of the things that parents tend to work through in the deschooling period. Um, I advise you meet the child where they're at. If they need extra time on a certain topic, you spend that extra time with them until they master it or you feel like they're ready to move on, and then you move on. And that's for every subject and every topic within every subject that you want to cover that you choose is important enough. And that's very loosey-goosey and, you know, that can be very anxiety inducing for a lot of parents to not, be told what to do. Um, so the evaluator, the state just requires the evaluator to say that the learner has achieved adequate growth and progress. And some of the learners that I work with, their adequate growth and progress for the year is that they made a friend outside of the house. Or maybe they can dress themselves independently now, right? It doesn't even have to be wholly academic, because if the mental health, the emotional health, spiritual health, physical health isn't where it needs to be, then no amount of academics on top of that is going to be like really on solid foundation. So luckily we have that leniency in Virginia for those learners and those families. So perhaps, yeah, okay. Okay, it makes sense. Good. Thank you. It can be complicated to wrap your mind around sometimes. Um, let's see. Yeah. Okay. Michelle asked about curriculum. And then Marie, my daughter, who's 6, loves school and doesn't favor the idea of mom being a teacher. Every time I try to do a learning activity, helping to sound out words, asking additional words, spelling based on initial words, she shuts down and tries to move on to something else. How do you switch that feeling? Yeah. Well, she's telling you she doesn't like the way you're doing it. And so you figure out a different way to do it. If Marie, are you guys in public school right now, or are you currently homeschooling? I suppose for either answer, the way around that would be a bit of a deschooling period. Deschooling doesn't have to be just at the beginning of your homeschooling journey. If you find yourselves, in March losing your minds, take a deschooling period. Something's not working. Let's reevaluate. Um, yeah, so I'm recording this, so it's gonna be shared on my YouTube for anybody who joined in late. No worries. Marie said she's in a small private school, but our option next year is homeschool or public, and we're leaning towards homeschool. Okay, yeah, so you've got time. This is really common. So perhaps she wants to be a very independent learner. Um, and at 6, honestly, they don't need a lot of traditional work. They should still be learning mostly through play. Um, so involve her, give her a lot of choice and autonomy in the process. That's what I definitely recommend that to every family, because when the learner feels respected and like their feelings and their opinions on what you're doing every day and why you're doing it and how you're moving forward, when they feel like they're part of the process, you're going to see their attitude towards you change drastically because they feel respected. So I would um, really let her lead it and ask her what she likes to do. Maybe you give her some options and say, what do you like best? Um, and really let her lead the way. And it sounds like she doesn't want you. Um, and that's okay if she doesn't want you directing it and micromanaging it and everything. Maybe she doesn't need that, you know? Um, and a large part of homeschooling and doing it really well is trusting our children. Um, you know, trusting that they want to learn and that they're capable of learning. And that can be really hard because a lot of times this isn't something we were given as children either, for sure. Um, Marie, did I give you enough assistance with that? You have plenty of time to figure out what's going to work, especially at her age. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. Simmer says, I understand the NOI to the superintendent and all, but what about the actual school? Does the school get notified that your child will not be coming back? And would they be marked absent? Are current schools obnoxious with attendance? Yeah. Okay, so what I recommend is sending the NOI off to the superintendent's office and also giving a call to the school and letting them know that you have sent your NOI and that your child will not be coming back because there's usually a communication lag between the superintendent's office and the actual school. And so the school, maybe it's going to be weeks before they're actually notified that that their child's not coming back. So they're marking them absent. And then they're sending you all of the notifications about your child not being there when you're like, well, of course not. You don't have to notify the school. Sending the NOI is all you have to do, but it can always be a good idea to give the school a ring and let them know just so they don't bother you. You've done your piece. They can leave you alone. Does that help, Samra? Anybody else? Any other questions? It's a big topic. And again, I'm going to be sharing on my YouTube. So if you need to rewatch, if you want to share it with a friend or your partner, please do so. And please know you can reach out to me. I love doing this. This is my heart work. Okay, one last call for questions. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining. And again, I'm always here to answer any questions. We can do a one-on-one video chat. Um, I can help you through the whole thing. So thanks for joining and happy Monday. Bye, guys.